My name is Elizabeth Kitsos-Kang. I am a professor of theater at George Washington University and the managing director of Educational Theater Company, ETC, which is an Arlington-based theater company for children and adults. And I'm also an equity actor and director.
My name is Cadby. I'm the theater arts teacher here at Yorktown High School, and I'm also the lead teacher for Arlington Public Schools. I'm also an acting teacher at George Mason University, Sonetic Theater, Signature Theater, and I teach in the Honors Conservatory at Theater Lab. Please join us in conversation.
And there seems to be a focus in Arlington, even with arts, funding being cut, that they're really trying to continue to celebrate the arts and to create opportunities for children and adults. So I'm pretty impressed, actually.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that there's a real understanding of process, and there's a license to experiment, and the value of the human enrichment of theater education and theater development, and in addition to that, the whole arts education component. That I think that the community of Arlington understands the importance of the arts in the development of their children and also the adults. I mean, I think that there's a lot to work with in this area, given the size of Arlington. It's really kind of phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And what I find here at Yorktown is that when I talk to kids, they're like, oh yes, I've been doing all these theater education programs throughout their elementary schools. And so then when they come here, they really are primed. They really are like, yes, I can't wait to do this. And they understand the value of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that the parents understand the value of it, so that there's a real culture of this is how theater is going to really benefit my child, regardless of whether they become, the stars of the future. It's more about this is something that develops their self-confidence and their self-worth and allows them to really stretch their comfort zones and their ability to empathize and understand and to kind of dig into really challenging material.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that's been sort of our mission with ETC from the beginning. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things we talked about is that we really wanted to become, the drama programs in all the elementary schools in Arlington, because as you know, mm-hmm. there are middle school theater teachers, there are high school teachers like right. yourself. But elementary school students, they do have music and art, but they don't get a right, theater teacher.
They don't.
And so if we are able to track them young mm-hmm. With theater, because students track with sports, which I'm also a fan of, but if you get them young and they start tracking with theater, by the time they get to you, they have a sense of how theater has helped them give a speech in class mm-hmm. or have an interview for a summer job, or many of the other things that theater does besides teaching you to be an actor. It mm-hmm. teaches you to think outside the box, be creative, find ways to express yourself that you may not have understood before. And it also really creates a sense of community. Mm-hmm. When you think about kids who are on a sports team, I think it's the same thing. They're a team, they're an ensemble, their goal is to win the game. And with theater, when you track into theater young and you start to really understand the value of it, you create this little group of friends who do theater together every summer in camps or in mm-hmm. classes like yours, and they have that same sense of, they want to put on a show, but the whole time they're working as a team. Everybody has to play a part mm-hmm. and collaborate, mm-hmm. exactly. So that's a great life skill.
Right. And the fact that APS has a theater program, a really developed theater program in all the high schools, including at HB and at all the middle schools, is really kind of a rarity. I mean, it doesn't happen everywhere. So mm-hmm. I think the whole Northern Virginia area recognizes the value of the arts and is willing to support it and fund it, and that the classes are making, and that the classes are part of the overall curriculum. And like here at Yorktown, it's a 4-year developmental program. So that I teach theater 1, 2, 3, and 4, and tech theater. And at all the other schools, there's also that same progression. And if the Arlington community did not support the arts and support theater in the extent that they did, I don't think that it would be a viable part of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what I know about the community, I think that the arts would be the last thing that would be cut, whereas in other places it'd be the first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really recognize that as important as the academics, the arts really provide the ability for a student to become a whole person, not just academic or sports.
Yeah, and I think also that theater can enhance the academic experience. I mean, one of the things we've tried to do at ETC is, address SOLs in theater programs. So we'll go in and do a Shakespeare in the Schools program and introduce at a very young age in elementary school Shakespearean characters and plot and stories having a beginning, middle, and end, and they're addressing things on the SOLs. And I can't tell you how many times I've had teachers say to me, oh, after they saw that program or after they took that class, they raised their hand in class, they understood the concepts. And I'm talking about, social studies or even math, And we think of math as being so left brain and theater being right brain, but really there is a marriage between the two that can be quite helpful. Which is cool. And I think I agree. Arlington recognizes that, and that's part of that process we were talking about.
So what is ETC doing next? Like, are there any shows that are coming
Well,
up?
we just finished, oh my gosh, we just finished our 22 sessions of camp, which is great. We had musical theater and slapstick comedy and Shakespeare Shorts, which is a film camp for students to create little short films with Shakespeare. And now we're just gearing up for the school year, and we'll be offering our after-school classes. But we have a couple of residencies that we're doing this year, and the first one is at McKinley Elementary. And I don't know if I can say this yet, but I think it's been decided we're going to do the Jungle Book, which is really exciting.
That's great.
When we do a production like the Jungle Book, the kids help write the lines, they help write the lyrics to the songs, they help create the dances, and so they have a hand, and the tech, they paint the backdrop, make their own costumes, so they really have a hand in taking a simple story and expanding it and
making it something real.
Making it something else, yeah. So we're excited about that. And then we'll also do a spring musical at McKinley, and then hopefully a spring one at Tuckahoe. We've been there about 5 years. So, and we're looking to expand and do more of those. We'll go into a school for about 10 or 12 weeks and hold auditions, which is really fun with little elementary school kids auditioning and filling out audition forms. And so we're doing that in our after-school classes. And then, of course, I'm also working with our Creative Age program, which is for senior citizens. Arlington has been really supportive with that. I got a grant last year to go into some Sunrise homes and senior citizen homes and work with older adults, is what I like to call them, doing theater history and taking conversations and creating plays out of them and then doing sharing. So that's great. And I was able to involve some of my college students at GW this year and do sort of an intergenerational thing with the older adults and the younger adults, and it was amazing to see how much they had in common.
That's great.
Theater brings people together. I mean, it really does. I mean, I have a student who's 101 years old, and I have a student, who's 3 years old. I mean, and both of them are so greatly affected by theater, and it really is life-changing.
Yeah, there's a large component of self-development in theater education that really is transformational, and that after a person, young and old, has gone through the experience of either understanding more about themselves or letting go of all these inhibitions that they may have, or assume the ability to understand a character, that they come out at the other end really appreciative of either their humanity or appreciative of the people that they worked with, or a stronger understanding of what their role is. And to me, that's the beauty of theater. And especially as an actor, because I teach acting at George Mason and at different professional theaters. And it's neat to work with, like at George Mason, I teach the Acting 1 classes, and there's people that have never seen a show. And so their understanding of what is acting is what they've seen on TV.
Sure.
And it's so neat to just kind of introduce them to this idea that acting is a craft, and acting is a thing you do, and that everybody can act. It's just accessing those things that are inside of them that they may have, been hiding or holding back. And so it's really neat to see that. And then to work at the Theater Lab, which is an honors conservatory for professional actors, and to see that range, but they're all, again, dealing with that piece of how can I be more human? And how can I bring my humanity to what I do?
And that's what I always tell my students of all ages, if it made you feel, even if it made you feel bad, it's okay. Theater is supposed to make you feel because you want to sort of understand a character in the play and recognize some of the feelings they're having or situations they're going through. And when you find that common ground with a character in a play, you start to feel what they're feeling.
Right.
So even I always tell my students, even if you just become a theater goer,
Right.
after taking my class, and I feel it's a victory because you're supporting the arts and you're going and you're understanding it's a process and it's not just memorizing lines. You can memorize French verbs.
Right, and you can't do theater without an audience because
you can't.
it's a performing art. What I tell students a lot is that theater is about communicating, not about entertaining.
That's
and a lot of
right.
times kids are like, yeah, I'm a clown, I can make people laugh. And it's like, that's not what acting's about.
No.
And that's really not what theater is about. Theater is
About
communi-
storytelling.
It's about storytelling and communicating an idea and something that you want to tell, something that a statement that you want to say about an idea, a topic, a theme, and communicating it in a way that people get it. And especially in high school,
Yeah.
that's the biggest lesson because there is this preconceived notion that you're up there to get applause and you're up there to
funny.
entertain and be funny.
Right.
And that to be a good actor, you've got to look good and you've got to have a certain aura about you.
And it's okay if it's funny, but it's only funny if it's true.
Right, and if it's communicating something, if the humor is to communicate, it's to further and advance whatever it is that you want to say. And I get that when I teach directing, because I also teach directing, and that's the first thing that the kids get. It's like, oh my God, this is really hard because I've got to say something. It's not a skit. So I'm like, we're not doing skits.
Yeah. You're telling a story with this piece
Right.
of theater. Yeah.
Right, and I call everything a piece. And what's a piece? A piece is something that hangs together, that has a beginning, middle, and end. But it's because a lot of them perceive anything that they do on stage as either a whose line is it anyway skit or a Saturday Night Live skit that has punchlines and everybody stops and laughs. So, like opening people's eyes to that is to me as a teacher, when that light bulb goes off, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, I call it it's the aha moment, the gotcha moment. Yeah, I mean, that moment to me, it's funny because I was an actor for so many years in the professional world in this area, doing shows in DC right out of graduate school. And I loved being on stage. I loved getting those accolades and all of that. And then when I became a teacher, I found that there was absolutely no standing ovation, no laugh, no moment on stage that was as rewarding as seeing a student get it. Just get it. That light bulb goes off and they feel it and they get it. And that to me is the greatest feeling. It's so much more rewarding to me than any applause I've ever gotten as an actor, because I feel, I'm passing my craft on and they're really understanding it on a deeper level, and that's just such a cool moment as a teacher and a director.
It is. It's a great thing. I was a professional actor as well, and
you say was, but I know you were in a show recently.
I was just going to say, I was in a show.
Once an actor, always an actor.
And I hadn't been on stage in like 18 years or something. And Sandy Meisner, a famous acting teacher, said that it took 30 years to become an actor because it takes that long to really understand the human condition and to really internalize it and to really kind of understand all the nuance and all the complexity of what that means. And I got on stage after such a absence, and it really was the application of all those skills that I've been talking about all that time. And my aha moment on stage was not, oh, there's applause coming at me. It was like, wow, I did it. I actually applied all the things that I've been talking about.
It's good to do that every once in a while.
Yeah. And
it reminds you when you're in the classroom why you're doing it and what it feels like. And to be practicing what you preach is really important. And
that what you're saying really does work.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I'm a good teacher. That works, what I've been teaching. I just did it myself, and it happened. Exactly, yeah. It validates you a little bit. I get that.
Is this exercise, is it really doing, I mean, it looks good to me, but, so that felt good to validate that.
Yeah, you know, the thing that's great about theater in Arlington and everywhere is that, and I think about this a lot, is that I always tell my students that it's not, you said 30 years. I always tell them you never stop learning. And to be an actor, you have to know about literature and history and geography. And because every role you play, you have to research and understand the time period and understand, you know, what's going on politically or globally at that time. And understanding all of that is an education in and of itself. So it's not just, oh, I'm getting on stage, I'm saying my lines. It's understanding the depth of the character, is educating yourself in many ways. And I said, Meryl Streep doesn't think she's mastered acting. She still takes direction. She still doubts herself and tries new things and experiments, you know, on stage. And you have to be open to that. And that allows for some vulnerability. I bet for high school students especially is so rewarding.
Definitely. It is, and the motto here at Yorktown is it's not about you.
I like that.
And what it means is that adolescence is really very myopic. You know, you think that the world revolves around you. It's sort of like a 2-year-old.
Yeah, or a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and to get them beyond that, to think about their contribution to a bigger picture, to the whole, as opposed to just about me, gives them so much freedom, because it's no longer people are looking at me and I'm perceiving what people are thinking about, and I don't care, but rather I just want to be. And so that freedom frees them up to experiment, and also frees them up to do all that research that you're talking about, to really explore what this whole theater world is. And the other thing I was thinking about was that theater is not just about acting, that it involves so many, I mean, it is the most collaborative art form. And the playwriting aspect and the directing aspect and the technical aspect and the acting aspect all come together to create this whole world. And I think that's what sets it apart from everything else. You really are creating a this little world, this little matrix, and it takes an awful lot.
I love that you teach tech classes here, and you know the tech students at GW are very respected. I mean, there's a real sense of, you know, the designers and the tech people all. I mean, without them, you can't do your show.
Right, you can't create a world.
If they don't like you, if they don't build that set, you know, your story doesn't matter. It really is about everybody telling the story together and feeling a sense of ensemble behind the, you know, behind the scenes, on the stage, in the booth, wherever you are. Yeah, and that's what I love, and that's what I was talking about earlier. That collaboration is what creates that wonderful sense of community, and for students, it creates a feeling of belonging, you know, and that builds their confidence too. Feeling like they're part of a community that's telling the story as a team makes them feel confident and like they belong, and I think that's really valuable.
Right, they're part of a bigger picture, and that their contribution, whatever their contribution is valued. It's not just about the special people,
right?
The ones that are the actors, or the ones that know it all,
or have the leads.
Have the leads.
There are no small parts kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And at Yorktown we do a lot of ensemble shows. So in the fall we're doing a piece that's being directed by a guest artist.
Oh, what are you doing?
His name is Tom Mallon.
Oh, I happen to know him. He works with me at ETC.
He's a teacher at HB, and
He's also a founding member.
and he's a founding member of ETC, right? And he directs around town. He does a lot of directing.
Right. So what's he directing?
So he's directing a show called The Widow Ranter, which WSC, Washington Shakespeare Company, had a reading of. And so he's going to be doing it as a competition piece. And I'm really looking forward to watching his process. Because that's the other thing about theater. I find that I never stop learning. And so having him come in, and I'm just going to sit back and just watch.
Soak it up.
Yeah, because it's so neat to be able to be on the other end as opposed to always like being in charge and knowing what you're doing. So he's doing that, and it's very much of an ensemble piece. And then in the spring, we are doing Alice in Wonderland. And the reason I laugh, because, oh my God, Alice in Wonderland is like total chaos.
Yeah. And you're directing?
I am, but I'm bringing in somebody to co-direct with me. Her name is Brooke Weber.
I know her too.
I know. And
small theater world in Arlington.
it is very small. And so I'm excited because we're going to be incorporating a lot of mine, which she does really well.
Yeah, she's great at that.
And then in the winter we always do
Student theater?
Yeah, we do one-person shows. And so one-person
nice.
shows are at the end of 4 years. The culminating project for a theater student after doing 4 years of theater at Yorktown is to write, stage, and act in a one-person show based on a character from history.
I love that.
Yeah, but they're really not one-person shows because the entire class collaborates together. So the students present their pieces at different stages, like they present 5 minutes, then 15 minutes, and then 20 minutes.
And get
and
feedback
they
from
get
the class.
feedback.
Yeah, that's
and then they're grouped together in groups of 4, 3 or 4, and so they become like their production company, their ensemble, and they get feedback from each other, and they work together to get their scripts up and to direct and to stage, and so
so everybody feels invested.
very invested,
Yeah.
and they all keep each other's notes, and in class it becomes this collaborative work, and the student that's doing their one-person show recognizes that they could not put their piece on without the feedback from everybody else. And then at the very end, last year we did 28 one-person shows.
28?
28.
Oh my.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so all 28 students were like, that was my idea. I gave that idea like 6 months ago. And it was actually incorporated.
So everybody felt ownership.
Yeah, and then after 3 years of being together as an acting ensemble, they really fed off of each other, and they were taking ideas from things that they did in Theater 1 or Theater 2. And so that collaborative process is really phenomenal. And so that when they talk about their they recognize that it's not really a one-person show, which theater is not.
No.
It's very much of a
Never.
collaborative effort. And then in June, the Theater 2s do very much of an ensemble piece, and that's a contemporary American one-act. And I don't know what it's going to be.
You choose it? Or
I choose it, and then we workshop it. So we workshop everything. We workshop everything for at least a week or 2, and then I create an acting ensemble, and then from the ensemble I cast. So the idea is that you're not being cast into a role, but rather you are part of an ensemble. And as part of an ensemble, you collaborate to come up with ideas for the staging. And so in Theater 2, I begin teaching the students what that really means. And so I take all their ideas and I incorporate them. And whether it works or not for the audience is really not my goal. My goal is for the kids to feel invested and to recognize that you can take any idea and really make it work. So
as long as you work together.
As long, yeah. And usually most of the shows at Yorktown have at least 20 kids in it, 25.
Wow.
We did Wizard of Oz last year, and there were 68.
Oh, Carol, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, it was wild. It was very cool. It was very cool.
Yeah.
And then the technicians are involved as well. So I think it's similar to what you do with ETC. I mean, you get all these these campers, and I've seen productions at ETC, and it's just so amazing to see all these kids working together and coming up.
And we
with
have
these great
a
ideas.
tech crew as well. We have
Right.
our techies who come back, and we have kids like Emily Marsh, who I first directed when she was in 2nd grade in a scene. It was a night of Shakespeare scenes in the woods at McKinley Elementary, and she played Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And then the next year was the Rainbow Fish in the first musical we did there, and went on to, study in our camps, and then, I helped her with her college auditions, and she
that's
studied
great.
with you
She did,
all through
yeah.
high school, and was in competitions with you, and just finished her BFA in theater, and then came back and taught for us. And that's what we love, is kids who start with us young, track with us young, and then want to come back and work behind the scenes, or teach, or be a counselor in training, or whatever they're doing as they become teenagers,
Right.
because they feel invested in the company, they feel invested in theater through you and through their experiences, that they want to make it part of their life no matter what, no matter where they're doing,
Right.
what they're doing.
Right, and they also recognize what they learned, and they want to impart that knowledge back.
They do, which is great.
Yeah. So yeah, and
Mentor the younger kids, yeah.
yeah, I think mentorship is another big thing that theater allows you to
Yeah,
do.
I agree.
Right, like Brooke, who's coming back. She graduated 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and she also went through ETC. And there, I think the other thing about theater is that it creates a real vocabulary of learning and vocabulary of understanding, so that when you work together, you have to come up with a way of communicating in a constructive and generous and critical way. And the point of it is to be able to get to a certain end goal, and that once you've established that mode of communication, it's a lifelong thing. So I think that the reason that these people keep coming back and the kids keep coming back is that they understand that this is a place where I can talk to people, and that we can get things done, and that we talk to each other as professionals and as human beings, and we don't have to worry about how to phrase things, but rather there's
There's
this
a common
understanding,
language,
right?
right,
And there's an
yeah.
understanding of respect, and there's an understanding of
Ownership.
and collaboration.
Right, and collaboration.
And that your idea is as good as my idea, and the whole point is let's get these ideas together to create
Right.
something else. And I think that ensemble approach to theater is really conducive to that. And that's what theater education is
And should be.
and should be. And
Isn't
sometimes
always, but should be.
Right.
You and I both believe in that.
Yeah.
We've all had teachers and directors who
Right.
don't believe in that. And I always tell my students, the product isn't the same. And I know it's not about the product, but if you don't feel that sense of ensemble
Right.
and that sense of community in a production, even if it's a famous play at a fancy theater, it's not as rewarding an experience. And I've said to them, I have acted in, basements of nasty theaters where there's like, the dressing room is the bathroom. And I've worked in fancy theaters where somebody does my hair. And it's not about the theater, it's about the experience, the sense of community, the sense of ensemble.
Right, and as an audience member, you can see that. I mean, and
You
sometimes,
can.
and you sometimes you're just looking at it like, and somebody will say, "Well, it's not that good," and it's like, "Well, what does that mean?" Well, I don't know. I just don't like it.
Right.
and
To
but
a
if you-
non-theater person,
Right.
they can't put their finger on why it wasn't
Right, or some people are like, "Wow," it's like, "Wow," and I felt something, and usually what they feel is the connection,
Yes.
or how the concept was put together and how everybody bought into the concept, so that it creates. I mean, I think that's the other thing about theater is that there's something intangible. There's something, for lack of a better word, something very spiritual, very holistic that you don't get from something else. And it's sort of, I think you get that in music as well.